Okay, and Deborah, if you would like to kick us off.
Sure, I want to welcome everyone and thank you all for taking time this evening to come take a look at some very cursory design ideas for Lupine Plaza. I'm Deborah Glickman. I'm with the City of Palm Desert. I'm the project manager for this project, and by looking at the list of attendees, I know most of you, but a couple of you I don't know. So welcome to everyone. I'd like to start the meeting by doing a little bit of background on the project as well as a little bit of housekeeping. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ryan and Rick, who are with MIG, which is the city's contractor for this project, design contractors. A little bit of housekeeping is all of the video is off as well as everyone is muted when we get to the Q&A portion. You're welcome to type some questions into the chat box. I believe there's a Q&A function. Nope, we have just a chat box function. So we will be monitoring that for questions, and there will be a time for oral question and answer at the end. We'll be going through a few designs today, so take some notes if you have questions on those. Also, the meeting is being recorded so that we can post it on the city's Engage Palm Desert website, as well as the YouTube channel. So anyone who is unable to attend today could get an idea of what's going on and engage with the project and get in touch with me to give any feedback or get in touch with the city to give feedback. So ask all the questions you have, because someone who's not here probably has the same question and we can get those answered at this time. A little bit of information. Oh, I'm sorry, one more housekeeping. If you do have a question, please feel free to hit the raise your hand function, and we'll keep looking for those to make sure that we catch you if there is a question. A little bit of background on the project. As most of you probably know, during the COVID-19 shutdown over the last year or two, the city temporarily closed the street on El Paseo and Lupine Lane and put in a dining area. And you can see actually the picture from that on the screen share right here. The city offered an opportunity for restaurants and vendors to sell food, and actually opened up a bar out there for part of the time. And it was a great opportunity for people to come and engage with the city, be outside in our beautiful weather, and still be able to get out and about at a time where it really wasn't something that was really offered to us that we could do, definitely couldn't be indoors. That closure, temporary closure, was in place through early December of 2021, and it was removed at that point. But before it was removed, the City Council was very interested in exploring what would happen if we created a permanent plaza there. So they hired MIG through a request for proposals process, and MIG is charged with creating a design for a permanent plaza at this location. We're taking all the feedback we can from the community, because there were some really great positives from, from the temporary space, and there were some concerns from the temporary space. And we want to make sure all of those are addressed in the design process. Also, the City Council created a subcommittee, which consists of 2 City Council members, representatives from the Parks and Recreation Commission, from the Cultural Arts Committee, from Architectural Review Commission, the Planning Commission, and I think I might be missing 1 or 2, but several city committees and commissions have representatives. We also have a representative from El Paseo Square, which is the property directly adjacent to the site. That subcommittee has met twice to give input on the project and review some cursory design ideas. Additionally, MIG has done outreach with the city on December 3rd. They were live in the plaza and soliciting feedback that you'll learn a little bit more about in this meeting, as well as we've met with some key stakeholder businesses around the area, including the Cobble Building, which is on the west side of Lupine Plaza. So the city is conducting as much outreach as possible to people who will be directly affected by the project and the community at large, because everyone will have some really positive opportunities for this project. The goal of today's meeting is to continue that dialogue and continue to get feedback from the community and answer any questions that the community has. From here, the project will continue to hone in on the design And in March, there will be a study session with the City Council to review the preferred design. And it's tentatively, the final design will go to City Council in April. All dates are tentative, but these are what we intend on doing in terms of the timeline to City Council. City Council is the final deciding body for this project, but I know the City Council always likes to get as much input from the community as possible. So feel free to engage with us today or reach out to the Engage Palm Desert website, which is engagepalmdesert.com. And there is actually a project page specifically for Lupine Plaza there. And so you can ask questions there, or I will put my information in the chat box, although I'm not sure it'll get to you. So my information is on that website, and you can reach out to me at any point. You can just call City Hall and ask to speak with Deborah Glickman. From here, I think I've covered everything. Rick and Ryan, please tell me if I'm missing something. I will jump back in if I need to. And actually, I think my contact information might be in one of the last slides. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan from MIG, who will further introduce the project and what today's workshop will look like.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Ryan Kaczynski. I am a project manager at MIG, and I recognize a few of the names from the subcommittee, and as well as some of the other stakeholder engagement we have done. Looking forward to hearing your questions and presenting the work that we've done so far, taking into account everything that we've heard from the stakeholder groups, subcommittee, and from our first community workshop. So we're going to start off tonight with just a quick summary of what we heard and what we saw during workshop 1. So we have some photos of the event, which was coordinated with the tree lighting ceremony along El Paseo and a local DJ and saxophone player. And it was really, really great event. We engaged with over 100 different people, and we had over 450 different individual voting on individual elements and what people wanted to see for the future plaza. So we took that information in those conversations, and then we started developing some graphics and quantifying that information. And so the first question was, what elements should be included? We really found that there were 3 tiers of elements that people were interested in. The top 2 that almost everyone voted for were shade trees and cafe and restaurant seating. And then there was a second tier that included water feature and public art. And then the final tier were elements that received a smaller amount of votes, from kind of children's play area to solar panels, terrace seating, and landscape and bioswale areas. And so the second question that we asked everyone was, on a sliding scale, what type of design would they prefer? And the 5 categories were, do you prefer something more playful or more formal? More modern versus classic, flexible versus permanent, landscape versus hardscape, and active and passive. And so the purple dots represent where everyone placed their stickers, and we saw some really interesting trends from this information. So in terms of playful to formal, is very evenly spread across that scale. And then for modern and classic, there was a concentration kind of right in the middle. So how are we going to blend kind of classic and modern styles? In terms of flexible and permanent, there was a clear preference for kind of more permanent fixtures for the plaza. And then for landscape and hardscape, you can see kind of preferences at either end of the poll. And the same thing for active and passive spaces. So this was our big challenge as designers, to take all of this information and these varying perspectives and create a single plan that would satisfy everyone. So finally then, just in terms of informal conversations we heard from the community, these were the top images and places that people were preferring. And it was mostly because they like the style of the landscape, the very kind of peaceful, relaxing environments, or how lighting was incorporated into the bench. In this picture was a very prominent comment, and for this one, right, how kind of the pavement pattern was very playful and interacted with the landscape, as were some of the highlights from these images. And so then at the same time, we also did some analysis in terms of the existing conditions for El Paseo and the project site. So this just shows the temporary plaza area from El Paseo to the alley, and kind of where it sits in relation to kind of the El Paseo shopping district and some other kind of public open spaces and public parks within a 5 and 10-minute walk area. So just setting the context for how we were thinking about this, how it serves as an amenity for the public, and supports kind of the essence and character of El Paseo. And so, and then just a quick note, in this image, this is kind of zooming into the specific site itself, but we changed the orientation so that north is now facing to the right of the screen. So we have Highway 111 on the right side and El Paseo on the left side. So to the north will be the shopping mall and the El Paseo Square right here on the bottom. And this is the orientation that we're going to use for our graphics going forward, but just want to orient everyone to that. And we did this just so that we can zoom in a little bit larger to the site itself. And so this diagram, we started looking at some environmental and local conditions for how are service trucks moving in and out of spaces, where is there access to parking, where are utilities located, where is there on-street parking, and kind of where is the sun and prevailing winds come from, all inputs that are influencing the design process for us. And now I will turn it over to Rick Barrett, who is the design principal for this project.
Thank you, Ryan and Deborah, and welcome everybody. Really glad we've got a good turnout tonight. So I'm going to briefly walk you through the two kind of emerging concepts that we've developed with input from the community, from the stakeholders, from the subcommittee, as Deborah outlined. And one thing that we've found, and as you saw with the overview of the community workshop in December, we presented a bunch of images and we got really good feedback. And to me, this is the distillation of what are the most pertinent and relevant images that seem to resonate the most with everybody we've spoken with. So just starting in the upper left, enhanced paving was certainly desirable. Providing shade trees and seating certainly would be welcome. Some cool and integrated paving and landscaping. In the lower left, some fun seating, not just to have benches, as we typically see in downtowns, but are there other elements that could become artistically oriented, if you will, in terms of seating? We'll need to accommodate stormwater, even though it doesn't rain that much. We know when it does rain, it rains quite a bit and pretty heavily. So we'll need to provide some sort of function of a rain garden within the plaza. And then we also know the temporary plaza proved to be a really good meeting spot for bicyclists on weekends. So we want to, we want to cater to that group and provide bicycle parking, bike repair station possibly, and then bollards as a traffic control device, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So again, we're going to present two concepts, and for each concept, we're going to show a conceptual plan like this, then a more rendered illustrative plan, and then a sketch. So that'll be the sequence we go through. So on this first scheme, which we're calling concept A, the street would actually remain open, but be reduced to as narrow a width as possible to 2 lanes. And that's probably something on the order of, 22 feet possibly, with the opportunity to close it on weekends. And that's what these little dots are, bollards, that would allow it to be closed for special events. So when it is closed, it's a shared street for pedestrians, but during the day, it still functions as a low speed, low volume, 2-lane, 1 lane in each direction, connecting El Paseo with 111. We would elevate the paving to be consistently flush across the whole plaza, so there wouldn't be a curb and gutter. So when it is closed for special events, it would feel like a plaza, and you wouldn't even necessarily know that during the day there were cars going through that plaza. So maybe if we go to the next slide, we can dive into the sort of illustrative rendition of what this scheme would look like. So I'll walk through this carefully before we get to the sketch. So we illustrated this in the closed fashion, if you will. So again, these are bollards that would prevent cars from going up and down this 2-lane roadway on Lupine. But again, we're showing it in the closed function. And so with the bollards up, we could have movable seating out in the plaza. We could have a small raised stage just opposite the corner there, as Ryan's pointing out. Trees that would be obviously planted, fixed in place, a series of double-sided benches on both sides of the street. And then one thing I want to mention there are the gateway water features, which we'll see in a second. And one thing we did hear loud and clear from just about everybody is this plaza, whatever the final concept and the final design is, the materials need to be high quality and really support and speak to the quality of design and aesthetics and art that we find on El Paseo today. So that's a really important element to the plan. And then continuing further to the north, you can see where the bollards are on the east side. And the reason those are located there is because we want to maintain unrestricted access into the Cobble building parking lot, and that's how it functions today, in fact. But with that, we can still continue the enhanced paving, which we're also calling permeable paving, and we can continue with the streetscape improvements all the way up to the alleyway. So it feels a little bit bigger, but the actual closed portion, when it is closed for special events, would be just that center portion. And maybe if we go to the sketch, so this is, we all know what it used to look like. We thought this would be a good, sort of place to begin. We heard loud and clear that, while it functioned and it helped some restaurants survive, it did not really match the quality of design and materials, obviously. And a lot of cities have gone through this. They just put up canopies from Walmart and picnic tables from Home Depot, but it worked, right? It got us through COVID. So now we're looking at, okay, how can we take that same intent and make it more beautiful and more permanent? So this sketch portrays what it would look like standing on El Paseo, looking northwest in that same view that we saw when it was a plaza. So as you can see here, just some of those elements I described in plan, the bollards that would prevent vehicular access. Again, this is when it's closed for a special event. Water features that would serve as sort of gateway elements and draw attention to the plaza, whether you're walking on El Paseo or driving past it on El Paseo. And then fixed seating sort of in the background in the areas where there's no vehicular traffic. And then when it is closed through traffic, those movable tables and chairs would sort of migrate out to the plaza. We want to, the scheme would include a really nice, elegant filigree of shade trees with overhead lighting, as we've sort of hinted at here with the string lights, and misters as well. We need, we know we definitely want to provide misters for that summer weather. So that's the, if we go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, and then sort of imagery that is precedent to this particular concept, integrating benches with landscape as we depicted in the upper left, some sort of small event stage that would function as we showed there on the plan view, that, when it's not used for a small performance would just be an area available for outdoor seating, some cool water features as we sort of hinted at with the sketch, and then more seating as we indicated in the lower left. The second concept, concept B, a little grander scheme. So on this scheme, the street is permanently closed to through traffic from El Paseo to the Cobble building parking lot. And that's the kind of darker Kelly green shape that we're showing, which we'll talk about in a second. In this scheme also, we're proposing to extend the enhanced paving to the south side of El Paseo, right there where Ryan is indicating. And that, the one, and we'll see that in plan view in a second, but and we'll see a photographic example also in a few minutes. But we thought that would be a really cool way, since we're going a little bit bigger, if you will, with the scheme of extending the pattern and the feel of the plaza to the other side of El Paseo, so that when you're driving by in El Paseo, or you're even walking by on the other side of the street, the south side of El Paseo, you would take notice of the enhanced paving and potentially draw you in to the plaza as a pedestrian. And then likewise, same concept, extend that enhanced paving to the north from the cobble building parking lot entrance all the way to the alleyway. So maybe if we just jump to the illustrative plan. So this is how this plays out in plan view in an illustrative fashion. So starting on the left, on the far south side, you can see where the enhanced paving, possibly raising the intersection as a means of traffic calming to the south side of El Paseo. And then the gateway arch, which we'll see in a second. So in this scheme, instead of fountains, we're proposing a gateway arch to help sort of recognize and celebrate the plaza itself and to draw attention to it as you're walking by or driving by in El Paseo. And again, on this scheme, there's no through traffic other than emergency vehicles. So they would have the ability to mount the curb or take down the bollards to get through if they had to. And we've also met with police and fire on some of these concepts as well. Overhead shade structures with misters, which we'll see in a second on the sketch. Additional benches and bollards. We can't have anything permanent within that sort of 22-foot zone because the fire department would obviously not allow it. It would prevent access. So similar to the last scheme, there would be an opportunity to have movable furniture out there throughout the day. But when it's needed for emergency access, that would have to be cleared out of the way. So nothing fixed or permanent. Nice grouping of shade trees flanking the entrance into the cobble building. So we showed some accent trees both on El Paseo and then sort of flanking the entrance into the cobble building. And then further to the north where the permanent plaza would end, again, it returns to being a normal functioning street with access to the cobble building parking lot, as well as a service dedicated loading area for Coda Gallery, where Ryan is indicating, and maintaining the on-street parking east of or north of the cobble building parking lot entrance. So with the sketch, we can see that from that same viewpoint, again, that what it used to look like when it was a temporary plaza. And so this is how it might look as concept B illustrated in plan view. So entry gateway sign, arch of some type. We have an artist on our team, by the way, who we'll be working with to integrate her concepts into the preferred concept following this meeting over the next month. But a suggestion of some sort of gateway, wouldn't necessarily look like this. It could be something more mid-century, more contemporary, but we wanted to just get this out there in terms of the concept of a gateway arch. Bollards in the foreground, as I mentioned before, which would be needed to prevent cars from driving into the space. And then you can see a consistent paving pattern, no curbs, no gutters within the plaza. So it's a flush pedestrian environment, and some pretty cool shade canopy, shade sail structures for shade that would also incorporate misters. And then with the relevant imagery for this scheme, that is a little different than what we showed for concept A. Excuse me. The elegant bosk grouped shade trees as we depicted in the upper left is something we all want. The middle image is the notion of integrated pedestrian vehicular paving. So you can see the paving pattern is consistent, whether you're driving on it or walking on it. And that's sort of the concept that we were portraying with extending the paving to the south side of El Paseo across the street. In the lower left, a more sort of modern contemporary version of a gateway. This is a plaza in the Midwest where it's called Phelps Street Gateway, but it was a really good branding opportunity for them. And also the string lighting, something we definitely will do in our preferred plan, I'm quite certain. And then on the far right, two different concepts for shade structure, something on the above, more elaborate, incorporating lighting, the bottom, a little more playful and artistic. And again, we'll be working with our artist that's working with us on the team. And initial plant palette that we've begun to identify for whatever the preferred concept is. we want flowering plants. Obviously, we want colors that plants that are native, drought tolerant, really really speak to the desert environment. So these are a few examples of the types of plant materials we'd like to bring forward with the preferred plan. And then back to what Deborah was saying about Engage Palm Desert. This is a screenshot of the website landing page. And with that, we'll turn it over to the group for questions.
I see that Kathy Rappaport has a raised hand. So Kathy, please feel free to unmute yourself. And if you want to go on video, go for that too.
It won't let me start video, but I can talk. That's okay. Fine. I am a merchant that is affected by Lupine Plaza. Deborah, I sent you an email during the conversation. I want everyone to know that my neighbors are vehemently opposed to the permanency of this plaza. So I am in the middle of the block to the west of the plaza. For the almost 2 years that we had Lupine Plaza, we were only really allowed to get into our parking by going through the Sage entrance or going 111 behind the building. We could not access El Paseo going towards Portola without going left out of Sage from the back alley onto El Paseo. And so that is an accident waiting to happen because cars park all the way to the driveway, so you cannot see beyond them. I do this twice a day, so I'm familiar with this very much. And it's a very big safety hazard. And it restricts our clients whose GPS tells them they can take Lupine to the back alley. Well, they can't go down El Paseo and turn right on Lupine and go left into parking. They have to go to Sage, turn right into parking. And that corner is very busy with traffic from Armando's. So that's one aspect. I have driven by that location on El Paseo at least 3 times a day, and it's empty. There's a total waste of city resources to do this. It's a misplaced idea. It's a beautiful idea. I love it. But blocking the busy traffic between El Paseo and 111 on a very busy area it's just misplaced. A park there, if I could see it where it could have a park on the other side of El Paseo where the residents are, but to block it in a business district is just, it's not a good idea. The other thing is when I would drive by, what was left? Trash consistently. So unless it's monitored, it's gonna look like a beautiful place, but I promise you, it will have trash if it's not monitored. And what did it attract towards the last few months? The homeless that we have a really bad problem with in the back alleys. So even today I saw someone hanging out there that was not there to shop. He was just there to sit. He was not using any of the merchants, nor was he doing anything. I mean, it was a homeless person that parked his bicycle behind the buildings where Lupine is, or behind the building on the corner. And there's a constant group of homeless people, skateboarders. So one of my neighbors had one of them recently break into his space. And it took 2 months for him to get his glass replaced because of the shortage of supplies. So we are very opposed to this in this location. I think there's a better location accessible to El Paseo, but this is not the right spot. And it's not attracting the people that the city says it's attracting.
Thank you, Kathy. I do want to address the issue of maintenance as this project moves forward for City Council's consideration. That is part of the process. I am exploring different maintenance aspects and working with the internal city team. That is a group I failed to mention that we are meeting with internally for things like public safety. We're working with both police and fire, and as well as street safety. All those different items are being brought forward internally and will be continued to bring forward as we meet with City Council. So thank you for your feedback. I don't see any other hands raised. Are there any other comments?
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you. And yes, and I do want to remind people that we are a bit on a schedule, so feel free to let us know everything you need to, and also remember there are other people that may want to speak. So I appreciate it. I see Karen Alexander, is that the name?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Karen. Feel free to speak.
I don't have anything that shows I should be raising my hand, but
that's
thank you very much. I live on Lupine Lane. I'm the president of the HOA of El Paseo Village. That's 30 units. And across the street from me is Sandrock, that is 44 units. How many people within those two complexes have communicated to you their desire to have something like this? Number one. Do you want to answer the question and then I'll go on to the next, or do you want me to continue asking more questions that I have?
I'm happy to let you to answer that. I personally have not received any feedback from any of the residents in the area.
Well, I think there are other people that are on the phone right now as part of this that may share the same opinion that I have. We like being in a quiet community. We don't want to have more traffic with people sitting in that area. Although when that was closed and had the chairs that were seated there, we didn't see very many people there. And I am on El Paseo, walking on El Paseo every day. And I maybe you had people in certain times, but it isn't convenient for us. We like the thoroughfare that goes through there, number one. Number two, can you explain to me what the special events are? Are you thinking of having bands and things like that there?
The special event programming is obviously not set yet, but I would the anticipation is that would be akin to what was there over the last year when the plaza was there. So there was a DJ with the saxophonist in December. The hours would stay in line with the noise ordinances. So any other type of events that go on stay within those same timelines. And usually most events on El Paseo really happen closer to the 5, 6, 7 o'clock hour. So that would all be part of City Council's consideration. But as of now, there is a noise ordinance in place that really shuts things down closer to 10 o'clock. So programming is yet to be determined. But it would not be, what I can say is it will not be used for a major event that needs to take up a lot of space. This is not that large of a space. So there are other areas in the city that could happen.
Okay. I also agree with Kathy Rappaport regarding the people that are behind that area and that we see in early morning as they come out. So this will become their homes probably. And is this a done deal?
This is not a done deal. This is an item that City Council is exploring, has asked staff to explore and present to them. The City Council members have the final decision on pretty much, most of the city operations. So this is the portion where the design is being completed with everything you've just mentioned in mind, specifically issues of people moving in there or sleeping there. That is something that is being considered for the design to help solve any concerns in that area. But no, nothing is a done deal until the City Council has approved it. This is the expiration period for us to present information to them. Okay. And I do see another hand up. So Karen, if you have another quick question or two, let me know. Otherwise, I'll move on to Carol Adney next.
Move on.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Carol, please unmute yourself. It looks like you are, so welcome.
Yeah, hi, Deborah, thanks. I've been full-time resident here for 22 years. I live about 1.5 miles from this location. And when I first saw the plaza created, I felt so appreciative that there was finally a place on El Paseo for permanent residents. There's a lot of people who are seasonal tourists. They come to the high-end shops on El Paseo, and people who live here full-time are not likely to shop in those stores very often. There's great places to get coffee, and this plaza would be a good place to go to have that coffee. So I am totally in favor of the plaza. I just wanted to put something forward in that regard. I like Palo Verde trees. They give filtered light, but I think there's also trees that give more dense shade. And you might think about that in addition to Palo Verde. The benches, sometimes benches, you have to sit side by side, not facing each other. There could be some configuration where people could actually be sitting across from each other. So you're not sitting like in stadium seating next to each other to be more conducive to conversation. So I really love the idea of shade. And I appreciate this. I think this is a great plan. And thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I don't see any other hands up at this point. Am I missing anyone? If at this point, if I'm missing someone, please feel free to unmute yourself. Oh, I see Patrick's hand up. So go ahead, Patrick.
Okay, so sorry, there was portions of this presentation that I missed. So forgive me for that. But the overall plan, independent of which concept we go for, I think is going to absolutely need to have a well thought through maintenance and security plan in place in order to prevent any of the problems that happened with the demonstration project, which again was just that, a demonstration. So everyone needs to keep that in mind. For the long term, I'm sure the city is working behind the scenes on something that would eradicate any of the problems we had previously with the demonstration. But I was on the first presentation that Meg made to myself as well as some other members of the committee. And could Meg by chance quickly highlight what changes were made from that presentation to this presentation, or is this more or less the same presentation?
Sure. Yeah, great question, Patrick. And it is more or less using the base from the initial concepts that were presented. This really just started to refine the details and to think kind of more specifically about what individual programs could actually fit within the spaces and how many trees, how much, and what's kind of what was the mix of landscape and paving and benches and things like that. So, so let me hear, is this large enough for you to see kind of with the cursor? Okay. So for this concept A, it was really the same idea where it was the flexible bollards and the flexible street, where so these could be raised or lowered so that perhaps during the week, this drive aisle remains open for two-way traffic. And it's just kind of expanded seating and areas on the side, and it has a dedicated loading area right next to the existing service on El Paseo. So this one really received very minor additions. We added 2 water features at the corner here to kind of act as gateway elements. So kind of outside of the walking path for the sidewalk along El Paseo. And just kind of changed around the spacing of the trees, and then started adding in benches. And then for concept B, this actually, we also, so in this example, the two-way traffic continues in line with kind of where the existing travel lanes are for Lupine Lane. In concept B, because we need to preserve the 22 to 24 foot right of way for the emergency vehicles. But what we did was we shifted it to the east. So we're really using kind of the parking lane and then one of the travel lanes. So this allowed us to really, whereas in this example, it's kind of more or less traditional street trees on either side of the street. This allowed us to group the trees together, kind of give a better prominence to the Cabo building entrance and create kind of a more pedestrian space here. So that was kind of one big change in this concept. It replaces the water features with a gateway arch, and then just starting to look into the specifics of how do we integrate benches and the supports for the shade structure. And then this example, it provides the rain garden area on the north side of the plaza, because as we know, the area, it slopes from El Paseo down to Highway 111. So this allows us to kind of capture any of that rainwater flow on site. So those are the kind of the main additions that from what you have seen last.
Okay, got it. And we've narrowed it down to 2 options versus the 4 that were initially presented to us.
Correct. Yeah. I believe it was 3 initial options.
3, sorry.
Oh, nope, it's okay. And yeah, what we had heard just in terms of feedback from public safety and public works was that the one-way option was not that desirable from safety and operational. So we're just kind of moving ahead and refining these 2. So then between this community workshop and the subcommittee group, looking to kind of narrow to one preferred concept that we would bring to City Council.
But now concept B includes that decorative pattern in the intersection of El Paseo and Lupine, whereas concept A doesn't. Is that for a specific reason? Because it seems like both concepts allow for vehicular traffic to pass through when and as needed as deemed by the city.
Yeah, and that's great observation. And there are a lot of interchangeable elements between these 2 concepts. So that the permeable paving or enhanced paving pattern, if that's something that is desired if concept A is desired overall, but they like that individual element, that's something that we could incorporate into the preferred concept. So it's not a strict kind of either concept A or concept B, take it or leave it. There's definitely, depending upon the conversations and the comments, there may be some mixing of the 2, right? So do everyone prefer the water features or the gateway arch? Those are kind of the decisions that can be interchanged.
Got it. Okay. Well, in summary, my 2 cents is I prefer concept A. However, I think that decorative treatment to the intersection is a statement. And so if concept A were to be selected with incorporating that particular element of concept B. And I also like that Lupine Plaza overhang, if you will. It's like an archway. I think that's great. I think the shade structures in concept B, that's going to be something you got to maintain and clean. And I think with enough tree cover, you could probably get away with having to incorporate those into the overall scheme.
Yeah, work smarter, not harder, right? If we can.
Right, and I love the water features that sit right at the forefront of El Paseo. So I think you guys have made some good strides forward since we last met.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, and I know that I received a question about water features, and there was a discussion of trees. Know that this is extremely preliminary. This is a feedback time, and anything that moves forward will be thoroughly considered in terms of water features. Do they look good? Do they look good on or off? Those kind of things. What shade trees are appropriate for the space. We will work with landscaping for that also. I see David Fletcher has had his hand up, and I see that Gary Ungar is raising his hand. So we will start with David, and then we'll move to Gary after that. And we have about 10 more minutes, so as we can keep things thorough and concise at the same time, that would be great.
Mine's quick, Deborah, thank you. I'm sorry I missed just a small portion of the presentation, but my question is, am I to understand that regardless of what option gets chosen, that a 22-foot wide emergency access has to be maintained through this space?
Correct. That's what the feedback we've received from public safety and public works, including the police department and fire department.
And so in that 22 feet, I mean, does it need to be accessible to the point where a fire engine can show up at 2 o'clock in the morning and just drive through it? Or, can there be benches in it? Can there be shade structures? Can there be misters? Can things get moved, I guess is my question, and put back, or does it have to be remain a 22-foot clear all the time?
No, it's so as hopefully it's large enough to be able to see here. It's kind of a combination of both of the things you said. So there's, in this image on the bottom left, we're incorporating kind of movable cafe seating. So those could definitely be there most of the time. And then on this image in the lower right, we're including both the gateway arch and the shade structure. And those would be there in this example permanently. And they would just be designed to allow for the fire engine to pass underneath. And then to your point about the fire engine, they would only be arriving and using this in the case of an emergency.
Yeah, I understand that they'd only be using it in an emergency, but if the building's on fire, they're not going to want to, move a bunch of tables and chairs out of the way, for example, to drive through.
And Deborah, feel free to jump in.
I was going to say, in short, we will do what they tell us to do. Whatever they need, we will ensure they have. They are the final voice on public safety. Both public safety entities are.
To me, it just makes a big difference in the way the space would get used and designed, depending if you can have things in that area or you just need a street running through it all the time.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of what the information we're gathering. We want to make sure what concepts people like, what we're moving forward with. And now we go back for another conversation with them, and that will be refined during the next round of design process.
Got it. Thanks for that. That was my question.
Okay. Sorry, I could have gotten to the point more quickly. I apologize for that. Now, Gary, I see you have your hand up.
Right. So my wife was also on. We have a unit in El Paseo Village right across from this. We're on the San Pablo side. We live there part-time. We live in Pacific Palisades and we go back and forth. We're not seasonal. We come back and forth kind of randomly. But so we're pretty familiar with the street and the neighborhood. I think what was done during the pandemic was sort of a great use of it, even if it was not used that much when we were there. I think that the two kind of questions is, one is the desirability of having this at all, and the other is, if that's the consensus, then which design to go with. I think there's a danger, because knowing this space pretty well, of this whole concept being a little on the grandiose side for the spaces available. I don't think that the Lupine Plaza overhanging signage, or it's a little bit overdone, and I think you're trying to cram an awful lot into a pretty small space. And the use as illustrated here looks wonderful and beautiful, people walking, But we've heard the possibility of food trucks. We've heard the possibility of music at night. And is the city's idea that this is an amenity for locals, or is this to bring in additional tourism, or to bring in people from surrounding communities? It's kind of what goal is on everybody's mind when they're considering doing this.
Yes, the idea is to continue to grow El Paseo, have a place for the community members as well as visitors. One of the terms, two of the terms that keep coming up in discussions around this plaza is rest and respite. So people, locals and visitors, need some time, want to stop, relax a little bit. Their partner may be shopping, their partner maybe running to get a cup of coffee, and it's a good place for people to stop. It's a place for bicyclists to stop. It's the city is really encouraging active transportation and getting out and being in the environment. And this is intended to continue on with that. If we're good, Gary, I see Lori Flint's hand up, but I just want to make sure, Gary, that we've answered all of your questions.
Yeah, you didn't really answer about the nighttime use. And if
I'm sorry, I missed that. I didn't hear that. I apologize. Yeah. Can you repeat that?
Is this going to be, I know there will be music venues, or is there the kind of thing where food trucks have been mentioned? It's kind of, looks very sedate in these drawings, and I can imagine it being not so sedate when crowds come in.
Yes, so in terms of vendors, it will really put the local vendors in the area. They will be first and foremost. And I know there are concerns about repeat uses. We will be working with all of the local, when I say local, I mean El Paseo merchants, to really populate the space. In terms of nighttime use, it would be used, I could see this really as a gathering place during the El Paseo cruise night, things like that. I don't believe the intention is to every night to be activating the space with loud music or anything like that, but really to have it as a gathering space as people want to gather, as also a space in daytime events, morning events. I said earlier before, a place to start runs, things like that. So part of what the City Council will be looking at is proposed uses for the space and regular types of uses for the space. That's something that is something they will discuss. But as of now, it will adhere to all of the city ordinances, including the noise ordinance.
Got it. Thank you.
So I see Lori, and then I see Greg, and we have about 6 minutes left, and we'll need a minute or two to wrap up. So Lori Flint, you are next, and then Greg's iPad, you are up after her.
Okay, terrific. Hi, everybody. Hey, Carol. Hey, Deborah. So here's what I would love to do when I sit under that Lupine Plaza arch. I want to play chess, and I want to grab all the easels I can and paint. I want to see people painting, and I want to see chess in the day or the night. So if it's well lit at night, it's a great place, a great quiet place to have chess tournaments. And I want to know, what is the seating capacity?
Yeah, and so we, with beginning to add in benches and some of the movable seating, I think for both concepts right now, we are looking at about, I want to say about 10 to 12 benches. So you think maybe about 20 people with two people per bench there. And then in terms of movable seating, again, we are right now showing just about 12 cafe tables with kind of 4 seats around them. So another
perfect
48 people.
Okay, that's a nice, small, quiet spot for community. So I'm going to grab my chessboard. And I agree with Carol about the Palo Verde trees. That would not work right there. We need something more lush and with some height. A lot more shade coverage would be groovy, and something that doesn't shed. Because when you're playing chess, the last thing you want is extra pieces on your chessboard. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. I'm going to move right on to Greg.
Hi, thank you. I seem to be missing a proposal that we saw earlier, an option 3, if you will, where basically there was no public car traffic at all and it would have just been 100% plaza. And I've gone down to the Lupine Plaza area a few times in the last month or so and just sat there. And what I'm stricken with is there's not much space. It's really not a very large area. So my concern is that we might be running into that problem where we're trying to please everybody a little bit, which might also have the outcome of annoying everybody a little bit. So I'm kind of actually in favor of the idea, if we're going to do this, we have to maximize the space we have and make it a plaza. And basically that means no car traffic is my thoughts about it, and really set it up to where people can sit there quietly and calmly and not worry about cars if they're walking through the plaza back and forth, that's just not a problem. And we could maximize the space as much as possible. Thank you very much for the time, and thanks for doing this presentation for all of us.
You're welcome. And Greg, I think what you saw earlier as the kind of permanent plaza without any cars is what we're showing in concept B right now. So concept B, it would be closed to car traffic. It would only allow for emergency vehicles in the case of emergencies, and that was kind of a requirement that we heard from Public Works and Public Safety, was to just that the design needed to provide enough space to accommodate emergency vehicles. And to your point too, in concept A, the idea would be that I was about to misspeak. No, so it's just what you had said earlier is what we're showing as concept B.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
So I don't see any more hands, and I want to really, really thank everyone for your feedback. It's so important to hear everyone's feedback from all different points of views. So before we wrap up, I want to see if there's anything else Ryan or Rick would like to add, and then I'll do a final sign off.
Yeah, that's been great. It's really tremendous input. Appreciate everybody's point of view and opinion, and really good feedback tonight. So thank you again, and thank you, Deborah.
Ryan, anything?
No, Rick said it all.
Excellent. So I can't see which slide is up, but Ryan, can you put the Engage Palm Desert slide back up? Because I really want to encourage people to continue to give feedback through Engage Palm Desert, not only on this project, but on a number of projects the city is working on. This is the city's pretty new site for engagement. It takes you directly to city staff to answer questions, as well as just gives you an opportunity to let us know what you're thinking. So if you do have neighbors, if you do have neighboring businesses that have concerns, that have questions, please encourage them to go to the site, to take a look at this video. Give us a couple days to get it off. My hope is to have it up. My hope is to have it up by Friday at the very, very latest, but really I'd like to get it up tomorrow or Thursday. But please encourage them to go there and then to follow up with any questions. Most likely many of their questions will be answered because we had such a good variety of questions during this forum. But I am here and I am happy to answer questions. And if I can't answer them, I will find the person who can. So with that, I hope everyone has a good dinner, because I'm sure we're coming up on dinner time for all. I appreciate everyone's time and have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.